There we go. No. Great. So good morning for those of you just straggling in, few of you. This morning's track is going to be here on auto glass in the future and the technology of what's happening in the auto glass world. And a lot of it will also have information that pertains to the crossover collision and what we also call the automotive boutique model as well. We'll go through that here in a second. Just quick brief introductions on who we are standing up here. My name is Gary Hart. I'm the Executive Director of the Independent Glass Association. We're the oldest actually the oldest and the only one that represents automotive glass replacement and repair on a worldwide basis. We were founded in 1995, and to date we have members that span the globe representing about 2,800 locations. In North America, we pretty much have more coverage per square mile than some of the bigger, what we call consolidators or automotive glass shops that operate under a single brand name. So when it comes to the ability to provide repair and replacement services to not only consumers, but also collision repair shops and other third-party automotive companies, we have a larger basis to provide those services. And at the same time, too, our information is in front of you. Our business cards are up there. Also, too, our phone number and email are there. On my website, Bob's website, SCR website, and SEMA, this presentation will be made available starting tomorrow, I believe. So if there's anything in here that really caught your attention, feel free to go watch it. If there's some specific slide or more information you want between Bob and I, just please contact us. I'll let you introduce yourself, Bob.
My name is Bob Baronic. That CMAGT stands for Certified Master Auto Glass Technician. So basically, I'm an auto glass installer. But I've been at this since 1973, starting as an auto glass installer, working up with a rather large Midwestern company called Auto Glass Specialists. They had 80 branches in 5 states. And I worked up to being their operations development manager, which is a fancy name for their technical expert. And I developed new profit centers. I developed their school. They went and trained their own people. And I also was their clearinghouse for technical information. So that's where I started from. I left Auto Glass Specialists in 1992, starting my company, Automotive Glass Consultants, because I realized there was not any independent training organization in the country. Everybody learned auto glass by hopping on a truck with a senior technician and learned from him. Now, that senior technician, they didn't make any justification whether that person was good at what he's doing. He just knows how to put in glass, not knowing if it was safe or not. And so we decided that we would start this business making sure that we provide unbiased auto glass installation training nationwide, actually the North American continent, because we train in Canada and in Mexico as well. So that's where I come from. I currently wrote a book called The Complete Guide to Auto Glass Installation. It is the textbook that we use in our industry, and that handsome devil's my son. I was too ugly to be on the cover, so I'm somewhere in here, but I don't know, that's about it. And so we use that as our textbook by which auto glass is trained through the Auto Glass Safety Institute, or Auto Glass Safety Council, which I am a board member of. And so we're going to be talking today about facts. I will give you my opinion, but I will label it as my opinion. You take it for what it's worth. But most of the things we're talking about today are fact. You can take it to the bank because we've checked, double-checked, and triple-checked our facts. So what you're going to hear today is something that you can take back to your business and be confident that the information you received here today is right. With that, I hand it back to Gary.
Perfect. And to Bob's email address, and again, his card, those are all in front of you as well. And we are more than happy at any time to speak with any of you. So please reach out to us if you have questions afterwards. To get started here today, I like to frame where our industry is at now. And when I mean our industry, we are talking all things automotive, whether it's aftermarket, collision, appearance, whatever the case is. Things are rapidly changing. And the conversations we have in the auto glass world have to do with where the vehicle started 7 to 10 years ago. So from sculpting, drawing board, CAD, 3D, and whatnot, they start sourcing components and whatnot long before we actually see the vehicle hit the road. And then sadly, when that vehicle hits the road, we still don't have all of the information about how to repair it. And we see that every model year. A new model comes out on the road, 2 weeks later it's in an accident or has some sort of loss and it's in your shop one way or the other. Dealership scratching their head, you're not getting anything from the manufacturer. So a lot of what we go through has to do with a lot of these newer vehicles. What I'm about to show you in this vehicle, these are two concept model vehicles that were produced in the last year or two. A lot of the technology that's in there, I'll point out as we go through the video, is in production vehicles today that many of you may own. And some of it will be released starting in 2018, 2019. So it's some pretty spectacular stuff. And a lot of the emphasis in these videos I'm going to go through has to do with the automotive glass. So let's take a look at this. We're going to have an SUV and a sedan in this case. And as the systems go through, we're looking at driver, it's a driver aware, so it knows when you get in just by your face, the view. When you get in, all these systems are pretty much in a lot of the vehicles now as far as how the seats and everything adjust for comfort. But what it starts to do is the car becomes more aware. A lot of the glass components in here have intelligence built into it. There's one or more systems that are powering it. Biometric security now in the door panels and in the glass. When she just put her coffee cup up on the roof, it's also detecting that. So we're talking like the moon roofs and whatnot have a lot of this technology, artificial intelligence built into it. Self-charging, the phone becomes part of the system now. Again, it's warning her, there's an object on the roof. So these vehicles now are very aware of what we're doing, and a lot of that component in technology has to do with the glass. So as they're driving here, some things that you're going to end up seeing, they're putting in a destination, and the car is now taking over saying, okay, where are we going, what are we doing? It's fully aware of the field in front. A lot of the glass technology now is not necessarily our traditional head-up projection display. It's actually part of the inner layer. They're able to put liquid crystal panels basically inside of the layers of the glass now. So you're getting real high-quality resolution see-through video in this. By being able to do this as well, when weather alerts come up and they start to sense adverse conditions, the glass plays a role now in that we don't have windshield wipers. Snow and rain disappear out of our optic field view now. So when we start to think of that component of the windshield and just removing it and putting it back in, there's more to that. Also in the car, as repair specialists, no matter what your job is, glass becomes more of just the windshield and the side glass. It also becomes glass components inside of the vehicle as well. We're also going to go through a lot in this presentation this morning of the driver-assisted systems. Tomorrow there's a big, I think it's 12 or 1 o'clock tomorrow, a big ADAS event where they're going to discuss more of this. And we're really going to hone in on just what these systems have to do when it comes to the repair and replacement, costs, how you get that through insurance billing and whatnot today. Just a few last things here. You see the car self-parking. There are many vehicles on the road today, but the significance of that has to do with how the car is able to do that, those components that are wrapped around the vehicle. More importantly, their position in regards to the glass that's in the vehicle. And of course, the most unbelievable part of this whole video right now is this end part where there's this happy family and they're all just getting together to, I think, go to the opera, which is kind of bizarre, but you get a good idea. The next one here is also showing technology. This is Jaguar Land Range Rover. The A and B pillars become transparent now. And these pillars are actually made with liquid crystal display panels. So the same thing you have at home, the same technology, the TVs you watch on your mobile phones, like the Gorilla Glass 5. Those are specifically made, and they use projection, the cameras that are outside, to pipe in the video. So as you're driving, it's aware of your view. A lot of the cockpits of most cars 2018 and newer actually have cameras now inside that watch the driver and the passengers, and they're able to detect when your head moves, and it gives you that field of view when you're moving left and right. So really, we're looking at glass going from protecting us to actually coming inside of the vehicle and allowing more of the outside world. We're also changing the way navigation happens as well, where traditionally you might have a head-up display that just has colored lines and you're just moving around it. Now it's actually projecting up images that very much like if you have a cell phone and you're walking around, you're looking at maps and it gives you that 3D and that real-time view when you hold it up with your camera. This is the same thing. It's using invisible ghost cars that you can follow a car as your lead guide. Again, the pillars also become transparent, help you navigate turns or see where your next turns are coming up. That's all possible because these windshields and the technology in the glass are all intelligent now. And going forward, we've seen that. A lot of this ADAS started off with real high-end vehicles, $100,000 or more. Then they came into mid-level cars, $49,000 and up. Then it came into the more economical zone range where vehicles from $19,000 to $50,000 automatically have some of these systems built into it. What you're going to see now is almost every vehicle starting to be produced after 2020 is actually going to have all of these ADAS features in it. It's just economical for the manufacturer to make one production run and put them in rather than making all these options available. Tesla really led the ground with that. So the vehicle trends, this is what we're talking about today. The corporate average fuel economy, which it kicks in and goes into effect, is the pressure behind all of this today. And in order to meet fuel economy standards, you have to make things lighter and you have to make things more efficient. So we're, a lot of us in here are aware of on the collision side, you start using composites and aluminum and you get away from steel and whatnot. When you do that, you have to replace those areas with something that's going to help uphold structural integrity and also give safety again to the occupants that are inside. So when we talk about a front-end collision, the cabin structural integrity, back in 2010, automotive glass, specifically the windshield in this case, was 25% of the structural integrity of a vehicle in that front-end collision. In 2017, that's jumped now to 45%. Now, the pillars, we're not moving away from steel, but the rest of the car and how the car is designed, we look at that windshield and say, okay, in these crashes, how can we make the windshield part of that to absorb that energy? And then at the same time, as it's absorbing the energy, again, have it to where it can fall and still keep the occupant safe. Then we go into the fact that now in a rollover, so much more force, inertia, everything happening, all that fun science that goes into it, it was 40% back in 2010. So if we were to go out right now, roll the vehicle, you're looking at the glass is taking 60% of that. And we're going to see these numbers between 2017 and 2020 go up another 5 or 10%. And that's because they need to make the vehicles even more lighter, because what ends up happening, this technology requires computer systems. And granted, we're all walking around with these mobile phones that do wonderful things, and it seems powerful. But when you think in terms of how many things the car has to think about per millisecond, we have to have slightly bigger computers, and we have to have redundancy. So that means 2 or 3 onboard computer systems. Then you have to add battery weight to that. You can see where this goes. So glass is going to really start taking over with regard to that. We start talking about the advances in technology and how this affects the trend. So with regards to the glass, and Tesla is a good example here, they have camera-mounted cameras. So again, around the cowl, and out of the driver's view, you've got 1 or more camera systems that are in there. We also now, our CM manufacturers remove the radar, LiDAR sensors from the front air dam areas and the grill areas, and they're moving those in cabin as well. And the reason for that is a lot of these sensors they found over the years, 2012 through 2016, get damaged by road debris or get misaligned. So you're driving down the road, there's a tire flap or a worker's ladder in the road, you hit that. Under normal conditions, you might dent or break the air dam, but now with these sensors being mounted in there, you're also throwing off a $1,500 LiDAR radar sensor that requires a $500 to $1,000 calibration. Not a smart move originally on the design. Engineers had what they had to work with at the time. Now they can move that stuff inside the cabin. They've also now gone to side mirror camera sensors. So what's unique about this, A lot of the vehicles that offer this 360 view today, like the Escalades and some of the foreign high-end vehicles where you can sit in your car and before you even move, the onboard display shows 360 degrees of your vehicle in real time. They're doing that because they're able to put cameras and sensors in the side mirrors, see through those side mirrors, and be able to give you full view of the sides 270 degrees. The front camera does 270 degrees, and the rear mounted camera in the back windscreen does the same thing. And we're also starting to see now too, the back glass mounted cameras also now include some sort of LiDAR or radar themselves. So the vehicle, actually all these components are coming inside. And the reason why they're coming inside is these are all part of the driver assistance systems that are leading to full autonomy. Right now, 25% of the vehicles produced today include one or more ADAS systems, and surprisingly, this was just brought to my attention recently, even tire pressure monitoring systems are considered an assisted driver system. And the reason for that is obviously if you start to lose pressure or there's something that may end up being catastrophic, it's part of the system to say, hey, you need to do something about it. So it's also very integral in this. 75% of these systems require a static calibration. Bob's going to get a deeper dive into this whole calibration aspect, the differences between static and dynamic a little bit later on. But right now, 75% of these vehicles that are on the road that are equipped with this require this type of calibration, meaning a physically set location for the vehicle to go through recalibrating its field of view. Now these calibrations, not surprisingly, they're going to cost you some money to calibrate. There's 11 plus calibration configurations between all manufacturers, and the systems to actually handle all of these cost somewhere between $7,000 and $15,000 as part of your initial investment. But then you also have the investment on an annual basis of getting updates, etc. Plus, you've got to train all your personnel that are going to handle this, not only on how to sell it, but at the same time, how to use it as well. And as I mentioned at the start of the slide, it's the stepping stone to full autonomy. Every component that's being added as a driver assistance system now is going to full autonomy. Waymo, Uber, Google, all these companies that have fully autonomous vehicles that are in testing right now, you've probably seen pictures where there's this just tons of stuff on the roof. And they've actually now consolidated that down to where that technology is being, again, fitted around every glass component of the vehicle today. So this is a perfect slide. This is a lot of information. You're thinking to yourself, wow, how do we handle all this? Where do we go to? More so, I brought up at the beginning of this, vehicle part identification. When these things are released, it is, in our industry, terrible to get information to know what's the vehicle equipped with, what's the components that are in there, and when we need to service it, how do we service it? Then our OEM part's going to be required. You can probably pretty much guess a lot of these components that are driving these vehicles, they're not just something that somebody in the aftermarket is going to knock off. They have very sensitive information in it that is proprietary, that is not easily copyable, because if it was, every company would have a Tesla knockoff at this point, and they don't. And the OEM parts, Bob will go through at some point here, have some efficiency in them, and sometimes they don't. It's a 50-50 coin toss on that. And then, will calibration be required? So we've done all of this work, we're going to give the vehicle back to the owner, but now, is the car going to have to be calibrated? And we don't necessarily see a fault when we turn the vehicle on. So pre and post scanning, what you're used to doing in the collision repair side of the world, is now something that effectively is taking hold in the automotive glass side. And it's just not for the driver assisted systems, it's also for other components that just before we are performing glass work, is anything else in the vehicle faulted? A, so the customer can know, but also you're shifting the liability from the service you're about to perform back over to the owner so that they know how to take care of it. And then, what type of calibration if it does require? So there's a lot of this information, where do we get it at? So, you can't rely on the vehicle owner to know. If you were to talk to a vehicle owner on the phone and they have a glass loss, and you ask them, start asking them questions, when it rains, do your windshield wipers turn on? And they answer, no, they don't. Well, the reality is they could have taken delivery of the vehicle, which we see in the glass world all the time, and they don't have the automated wipers turned on. So the rain sensor effectively has been in an off state since they bought it, or they're not aware that it got turned off by the car wash they went to, or all these different things. So we like to not rely on the customer because they're not exactly going to know. Dealerships and parts suppliers, they're little to no help in providing any of this information when it comes to ADAS and how the vehicle was delivered. With so many different, what we call port capabilities. So when the vehicle's built at the plant, there's a plant configuration. And then sometimes those vehicles get on a boat or railway and they make it to now the port delivery. And at port, that's where we see almost 2/3 of vehicle add-ons being put in because it's a secondary manufacturing process. And there's a huge discrepancy in the logistics of the data between plant, port, and then dealership and delivery. And the only real method of determining at the end of the day is then with the vehicle's registration with the state. By law, when all those options are sold and you have that vehicle contract, the buy-sell agreement between the owner, that's where all of these things are laid out in plain English. So if you have lane departure warning system, that package will be labeled as such and it'll say lane departure warning system. So while we may not have part numbers, the nice part is we actually have the English language words to go by.
But do we have access to it?
You absolutely do. Thank you for bringing that up. It's in the Independent Glass Association, we have a program called OE Part Verify. We cover 96% of all manufacturers on a worldwide basis. That part information directly comes from the manufacturer. 90% vehicle and part lookup availability and accuracy. And what we mean by this is out of 10 lookups, you're going to have one lookup that, from an automated standpoint, you're not going to be able to get the information. You'll have to do some manual digging, going back and looking at the wording on the buy-sell and some of the other stuff that comes up to say, aha, this matches back to this configuration in this part. So 90% of the time, it's golden. You're just rolling right through it. It's telling you what the vehicle is, what the part number is. And it's all in real time because it's 100% internet-based. So from your mobile phone, your desktop, your tablet, you're able to get this information. So let's take a look at how this happens. You're punching in the license plate number or the VIN number. So when we actually punch that in, we say go. Within a second, if you punch in the license plate number, it's going to deliver the VIN to us. From the VIN, we get the decoding of the vehicle. Now what's unique in the automotive glass world, we have this thing called NAGS, the National Automotive Glass Specification. That database is somewhat available and available in the Estimatics software. And the problem is, NAGS has their own part number, and the manufacturers have their own. And bringing those two together, NAGS isn't perfect in cataloging that, and at the same time, the manufacturers, when they make attempts to say, well, we think we know the NAGS number for this, they're wrong. And Ford in our industry just started adding NAGS numbers actually to their dealership systems. And so service centers or part centers that are giving you this information, about 50% of the time are giving you the wrong NAGS part number. So in this case, once we say, hey, go, the system then queries. So in this case, queries Honda. Honda comes back and says, yes, here is the build out for that VIN number. There's the exact windshield. Here's all the other information that needs to go with it. And oh, by the way, here is OEM suggested pricing on it as well. So it's giving you back everything that you need to know right in one shot. From there, where we translate that back into what we call billable part numbers, that'll come back and automatically select our NAGS number. We have the manufacturer number, and we also know what's in there. If you are buying automotive glass and you're in the automotive glass industry from Pilkington, PGW, or Migrant, who are our suppliers and some of the OEMs of glass, it'll also return back the stock available to you and what your pricing is. So you're getting all of this within 30 seconds to 1 minute. Comes up, you have all that information. So at this point, we know what the vehicle is. We know, in this case, it doesn't have a lane departure warning system. It doesn't have forward collision alert. So at this point, this is just really a plain Jane installation. You're going out there, you're not worrying about disrupting any systems. Calibration's not actually going to be required in this case. So a very easy and comprehensive system to use. Now, we've determined the part. Our OEM part's going to be required here. So, you know the part number, what are we going to do? Is it required or recommended? Because the language that the manufacturers give, and we're going to see that here in a second, they use these legalese terms. Required, recommended. Required, we even find 50% of the time you can use aftermarket glass that comes from the same OEM, and it will work, and then 50% of the times it may not work. And there's a lot of conditions when you're refitting glass, putting it back in, that could slightly throw off the camera. So when you think about the camera that's mounted on the opposite side of your rear view mirror, they typically put banding or shade stripes around those areas. So when the installation goes in, there's some play within the cowl for the windshield to go back in. Depending on the sensitivity of the camera, even if you laid OEM glass in and it was just a millimeter to the right or the left, you could fault the camera because the camera's saying, hey, I see a line now just right here in my view of where I'm expecting to be calibrated, and it's not there. So even if you have OE glass, there's still that possibility of faulting it. Plus, if you go to some dealerships, those dealerships are going to say, we're not going to calibrate this unless you used OEM glass. So you have to, that's one of the things Bob will go through, just things to beware when you're dealing with calibration. We know the NACS database doesn't have any of this information. In fact, the SEMA systems don't as well. And again, the IGA members have access to it. So going back to that screen where we see this part here, if we had a part where it had forward collision, those info buttons there are letting us know that if that's the part we're selected, we can click on it, and it's automatically going to bring up the manufacturer information to let us know. So in this case, it says, we recommend that you replace the windshield with a genuine Honda replacement windshield. So they're not saying it's required, they're actually saying they just recommend it. Then they go on to say, making even minor repairs within the camera's field of vision or installing an aftermarket replacement windshield may also cause the system to operate abnormally. So they're just letting us know. We're shifting the liability over to you, so if this is something you're going to use aftermarket, this is your problem. However, on this side, we're recommending, not requiring it. But now they do say, after replacing the windshield, have a dealer recalibrate the camera. So there's no doubt about this. They're saying you have to have a dealer do it. So that comes back into the whole deal. If you used aftermarket glass and you now take it to this Honda dealership, the dealership's probably going to go, you didn't use OEM glass. So this is where you're either going to start thinking to yourself, do you invest in the tools for your own calibration, or do you outsource that to a non-dealership group that does calibration? Because they're going to say, hey, great, we'll get it calibrated, we'll work with you no matter what type of glass it is.
Gary, I don't think it's going to be a problem as long as it communicates.
I'm sorry?
I'm a Honda dealer. Fixed operations for 28 years.
Okay.
So if you brought it to me and it communicated, I'd be glad to do the work. If it didn't communicate, I'm still getting paid for my time, as long as you're willing to take that chance as the installer or the consumer.
Well, we love you for that. Thank you. Because really in the automotive glass world, it's money the other way.
It's just finding a dealership that wants to make money. You know why we're here.
But the argument has always been, all right, if they don't want to do the calibration because they're busy, or they want to sell glass.
Well, your problem is you have this. And as a dealer, I can tell you, I'd love to install factory glass all the time because of the markup that's in it, but sometimes it's just too cost, it's not cost effective. So for the consumer, they come through my shop, and I give them the option. You want factory, you want aftermarket. What's the difference? Same manufacturer. It's one says Honda on it, one doesn't. It's you know, so we do that, but we haven't gotten to the point where it's created an issue. We're doing calibrations, but not for glass yet. It's for other things.
Okay.
The lane parking, one of these things like that.
Okay.
Where are you located?
Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania? That's good. Considering that we've been working with this for about 2 years, many of the dealerships, unlike you, don't even know what ADAS is.
I didn't until today. I'm new to this. We opened up body shops, so I'm trying to
Right, so ADAS is a whole system where recalibrations are required to bring the vehicle back to its pre-loss or pre-installation. And so it's very important, as Gary alluded to, you've got that camera shooting through about this much. And you've got to get that dead center every time.
Fraction of a millimeter.
1 millimeter makes a
200 feet is
whole
a long
difference. You bet.
What does ADAS stand for?
The Advanced Driver Assist Systems. And it's something that's going to be used a lot more out there. You're going to see it a lot. And it's a huge selection of products added to the automobile. You're a Honda dealer? You have the new 18 coming out. I just read on the internet this morning. The new 18 Honda Accord is filled with ADAS systems.
We haven't
No
even serviced it
service.
yet.
Right.
It's on the lot we're selling.
It almost drives itself. It's got everything in the world in there. But we have had many Honda dealers that won't even touch it unless it's an OEM glass in it. And this is where I want to give you a warning. Those of you who think that you can put in an aftermarket glass and take it to a dealer and have it recalibrated without any issues, that's a fool's game. You need to find out what your dealership groups will accept and what they won't. May take buying a lunch, all right, to get your dealership groups to work with you. But the fact remains is the IIHS, that's the Insurance Institute of Highway Safety, some of you know that, and there have been many other calibrating tool companies that have successfully calibrated aftermarket glass. But if the dealer refuses to do it, unless you have OE glass in there, you've just put in a piece of glass you're going to have to throw away.
As long as there's no problem with communication back and forth. When I had the BMW,
That's true. That's exactly what I'm saying. You might have to buy a lunch.
The rain sensors at the aftermarket BMWs, they worked or they didn't. It was a crapshoot. Sometimes it did, sometimes it didn't.
Yeah, rain sensors on those are horrible.
We always run.
Not only
that,
that, the BMW rain sensor also goes to the brake shoes, heat zone, which is actually part of the ADAS system. Did you know you're supposed to go and have your rain sensors recalibrated on BMWs? No, you probably didn't, did you? But they're supposed to be.
That's been like that for 10 years.
I know. Yes, sir.
And one of the big questions that comes up is what's the definition of aftermarket? Because there's so many companies out here now that are considered OEM, which aren't, in my opinion, even though they say they are. So how do we find out what is acceptable and what is not?
Well, that's a good question. Other than the OE, there's just a difference between OE and OEM. OE is original equipment. OEM is original equipment manufacturer. All right?
Which means?
Which means OE is the actual glass that was put in the car at the assembly plant.
Okay.
That manufacturer has the specs given to them by the vehicle manufacturer. They're the only ones that have the accurate measurements. Everyone else is reverse engineered.
So let's go back to Honda for a second, and Toyota and Lexus. I get glass all the time that's Lamy safe, and it used to say Lexus on it, but they acid etched it out. So it's not technically aftermarket, even though it's still factory.
If it's Pilkington, is it still the same? Because they're the ones that put the BMW glass.
Look.
So if you buy,
I know, it's
No, we just had this conversation.
We just had this conversation last night. Actually, Pilkington has two separate lines, for OE and for aftermarket.
right. So you're saying they have the specs, so if you buy the aftermarket Pilkington, is that matching?
But here's what you need to kind of understand how things work. It's a little story I tell in my school. I've got the Baronic Henry. It's a brand new car just introduced. Okay? Mike, I want you to be my glass supplier. Okay? I'm going to give you all of the specs, and I'm going to tell you I don't want any more than 5% defects. I will deny every other, if I lose that, you lose the contract. Okay?
That'd be a good way to put safe flat out of business.
Now, Mike, you're a manufacturer, so what are you going to put in place to make sure your defects are under 5%? Whatever it takes, right?
Sure.
Considering that I'm going to build 120,000 of my car, you want that business, right? So you'll put inspection spots in between every manufacturing process. All glass can be recycled until the lamination is added. Okay? As soon as the lamination is added, now it's out of your pocket. Now it's junk and you can't fix it. So you're going to have a million inspection points when you receive the glass or when you manufacture, when you bend it, when you paint it, put the frit on, when you put your brackets on, and right before it goes into the autoclave, they put the lamination in.
Get your wiring.
Every one of those inspection points is a cost, high cost. But you also want to make glass for the aftermarket. And to compete with this gentleman who's an aftermarket glass producer, you have to reduce your costs. In the aftermarket, we aren't as picky as the OE. So they take some of those inspection points away. So now a distorted glass will make its way through. Okay?
No different than a fender.
No different than a fender. You're absolutely right. And what ends up happening, and typically, a good auto glass installer knows enough to make it work. There's a point where you can't make it work, but most of the time we can make it work. And it's worth the lesser price for the glass. So when you talk about aftermarket versus OE, there's only two levels really. Now, let me
What happens
explain.
when SGC gets a hold of it? They tell us we'll pay you 45% of cost.
What's that?
What
Say that
happens when
again.
SGC, Safe Light Glass,
Yeah.
gets a hold of it because now they're running all the goddamn insurance companies? What happens when they say, we'll give you 45%?
Well, we can't discuss that. That's
Oh.
kind of antitrust, and I don't want to get into trouble with SEMA and this kind of a thing.
Yeah. But it's the bottom line when we're being quoted a certain price that we have to charge.
I agree.
Yet,
You've got a
we have to buy it
situation.
at two different levels.
Gary's going to mention something in his presentation coming up. But I think, and this is my opinion, remember I promised I would give my opinion. I think the cost of glass is going to go up.
There's no question.
Okay? I think that the glass companies, with the introduction of ADAS, is going to up their game. The quality of glass that are going to you guys now are going up. And with that comes more price. And with that, you need to charge accordingly. And if you're trying to beat the guy for 99 bucks installed, forget it. Forget it. Change your business model. We're quality, we're not quantity.
Right.
That's what you need to do. And don't deviate. You're never going to get every job. You're never going to get every job. So why try? Just do the ones that count. And believe me, someone who owns a car with a lot of ADAS in it, I'm not going to go to the guy for $99 installed. I'm just not. And I wouldn't buy an insurance policy that would allow it. And many people sitting in this room already have ADAS in their cars. And they're going to save your life someday. Maybe not so far, but they will. And that's where the difference comes in.
And on that cost basis, so when we look at flat screen TVs, let's just talk about that for a moment. During the early days of manufacturing process, they had to figure out waste. And that's why LCD panels were so expensive. They had a high amount of waste coming from the glass. And they figured that out, and they're like, great, now we can make, you go down by a 42-inch 720p monitor for 150 bucks all day long. That used to be $1,500 easily. Curved glass is a much different deal when it deals with this. And when you start talking about putting liquid crystal displays inside a lamination area of curved glass, the cost is going up tremendously. And when they're talking about 2/3 of the vehicles on the road by 2025 having that type of technology in it, glass isn't going to be $45 anymore in the aftermarket, and OEM glass isn't going to be $1,100 anymore, for instance. So, and it's changing because companies like Safe Light and other third-party administrators, they are caught behind the curve. They are caught off actually guard by this. So not only are they an administrator for insurance companies, they also have their own retail, and their own retail wasn't ready for this either. So before I kind of go any further, to kind of give you an example of the type of technology that's going in my hand here, this tiny little ball, it has a computer inside of it. It's actually got 2 lenses. This actually provides a full 360-degree view when it is mounted of this entire space, and everything in real time in 4K resolution. So we're talking its ability to see the most minor things at quite a distance, and it handles itself is all in here. How it's mounted inside are on tiny little gimbals. So if this is mounted and I'm jumping up and down, it's able to stabilize itself in real time. So when I have the video quality, it's not jerky. So imagine this mounted right at the front of your vehicle. You're driving down the road, you're hitting potholes and whatnot. Most of the camera systems up until 2016 that required that static calibration, they were physically mounted. Subaru is the worst offender of this. Their eyesight technology between version 1 and version 5 was this piece of plastic, hard mounted, super glued in, right there. And when you took that off, all bets were off. It requires the calibration no matter the difference. And if you were off-roading a Subaru, because it's four-wheel drive and it's got all these neat features and they advertise it, go up the side of a mountain and go down, there's no doubt that that housing over time loses its own calibration and it actually requires you to go to the dealer and have that done. So what we're seeing is that technology is miniaturized. A computer and everything is inside of this, and it provides everything that the vehicle would need to know for traffic, lanes. This thing's looking at everything. So that little piece of technology that's in my hand here handles all of that. But this is what we call all self-healing. We'll talk about there in a second, but I wanted to just segue on that real quick. On that calibration note, none of our databases, our estimatic systems, they don't tell us whether calibration is required or recommended. And again, the tool, the Independent Glass Association, going back to that where it says the requirement is there. Again, all of the ADAS vehicles that we have cataloged in the system have this advice one way or the other, whether it comes from the owner's manual or it's a direct bulletin from the manufacturer as they state on there. What type of calibration is required? So you're looking at a system right now that handles the actual static calibration aspect, where you've got this pristine environment that's set up, it's white walls, the floor is leveled, all of that happy fun stuff that goes into it. Then it requires this extensive system on how to put this, the cameras realigned, etc. So 75% today are static, 25% are dynamic as far as calibration goes. Then we talk about that self-healing. This is truly the future of where all the automotive manufacturers are going. And it's not because the manufacturers didn't originally want this. The component manufacturers, the companies that make all of the little tiny things that are inside of here, that's the technology's caught up. So when you think about 3 years ago to today, this is how far it's advanced. And then you go and look at a camera from 3 years ago, it's twice the size of this. In fact, 2-3 years from now, the same type of camera that is in your cell phone will be actually what's powering the entire system in your vehicle. So they're going to make them so small that in space these things will have to operate autonomously and they'll have to self-heal. Another good example I'd like to point out, the Grand Cherokee starting in 2014 on. Originally owners of that vehicle would go into their garage long after the car's been parked and hear it making weird noises. And that's actually the vehicle going through its own calibration process, calibrating the LiDAR, calibrating the camera, and the component manufacturers behind that technology were smart. Most vehicle owners that are spending $50,000 to $60,000 on this Jeep Grand Cherokee are going to be parking it in familiar surroundings, probably a garage. So they set up the system that this dynamic and self-healing calibration, the vehicle owner, they know next day is going to pull out and drive it. So it's going to say, oh, that's a road sign, that's a lane marker, that's a stripe, and boom, yep, I can see it all. You park in the same spot in the garage every day. Things don't move in your garage that much. Shovels hanging up, ladders here, that's on your workbench, whatever. The camera sees that. So when you pull in there and you sit, it'll say, okay, I'm going to move the vehicle up and down, I'm going to get it level. Do I see it? Yep, I see those same objects I saw yesterday. It does all of that. It's creepy, but that's why the car is doing that. And it's also doing some hydraulic calibration, some other things, but it's also reprogramming its safety systems inside, or its driver assisted system. So that's something that's really coming up. Manufacturers don't want to have their dealerships or mechanic shops deal with this type of calibration. So that's why we're seeing some self-healing. Yeah.
How is it recalibrating itself when it's in the garage like that? Like the distances that it's from everything?
The most thing is, what does it see as far as clarity goes? So as far as like road signs and lane markers, if it knows within a certain degree, if a stop sign should look like this is probably not a stop sign. That's a stop sign that got hit by another vehicle. So what it needs to make sure is, okay, in relative to the space that I'm standing, am I standing straight up and down, yes or no? And am I focused to be able to see everything in clarity that I'm supposed to see? So if I'm supposed to see the side lane markers, Can I still see them? And it takes into account everything in between so that there's no blind spots. Because even 1 millimeter of a blind spot in this, it'll actually say, I'm faulted, I can't see it. And that's when we talk about that banding that's on the windshield. If that's even taking the possibility of not seeing a lane marker or a sign or a pedestrian, it's going to say, I can't do this. These actually have the ability to, the camera can move out, move in, move to the side. It can go anywhere in space 360 degrees to realign itself, refocus itself, and make sure it's healthy.
Where is that camera mounted?
In most vehicles, this is right up in behind your rearview mirror. And it's in a slope setting, and then it's usually in a housing that allows light refraction to be handled in a certain way.
Don't mistake the fact that the cameras that are currently in the cars are like that. This is much more advanced. There's very few that are self-healing, is the term he uses, that are actually active systems. Active meaning that the car takes over driving. There's warning systems, and then which are passive, and then there's the active systems. So this is the future, as Gary said. This is the future. It's not here yet, but it's coming.
2018 vehicles do have this now, by the way, most of them, yeah.
So, do you have a tip for, we're talking about recalibrating the camera. So when an installer's putting the glass in, how does he calibrate where to put that frit? See what I'm saying? The camera you can recalibrate, but if you're installing it, you get the frit off 2 millimeters. How do you aim that frit if you're an installer?
The frit is in the glass, obviously, and the camera is attached to that glass.
Right.
So if the bracket that the mirror is on is off or crooked,
But if you put the glass in the top guy,
same diff.
so for an installer to drop that frit in the right place.
You have to center it perfectly.
Yeah, so
And you also
you have a tip for that?
That's true too.
You have on the bottom.
A lot of the glass does on these systems that are that way, yes. So
We'll talk a little bit about that in my section coming up, and we'll re-ask that question if you want.
Okay.
So imagine the plastic housing is like this. You'll see those distinctive line patterns on the glass. And even on aftermarket glass, where that should be. So when they're dry fitting and they're looking, they should be saying, okay, am I in that area? And then the most important thing is making sure that none of that banding or striping is going in any direction, getting that as precise as they can. And that takes skill. That's where you put your better technicians on those jobs, the ones that have more of that eagle eye, they're more sensitive or OCD to that process of putting that
There's a
in.
very good chance that there's going to be two-man sets again, guys.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just is. You're talking about so sophisticated of technology, and it's got to be right on the money, that two-man sets may be coming back. We had a good run. We've had some great tools. But the fact remains is we may have to go with two-man sets, which also brings up the price of glass again. Price of the service has to be adjusted for the technology we're going to be dealing with.
So glass shops will actually be able to make money again?
Let's hope.
Yeah, offline, and I tell glass shops this all the time. If you're not making a minimum of $1,000 per job, you're doing it wrong. And all glass shops are doing it wrong. Safelite does it wrong. So everybody's in the same boat.
Yeah, they're doing it wrong for 10 years.
We can talk offline about that. There's some great things the Independent Glass Association can share with you in regard to that. OEM repair guides and scan tools. So the repair guides, like new cars, you're not going to get those repair guides right away. It takes about a year or two to catch up. Scan tools on another level, though. Scan tools are those devices during the manufacturing process that give the car a thumbs up or nope, reject. And traditionally, scan tools have been significant devices that you make investments in. And today, a lot of these scan tools are what I have right here in my hand. This will provide 100% interrogation and diagnostic of all vehicles in North America. This plugs into the onboard diagnostics port, magically via Bluetooth to my mobile device, a tablet or a cell phone. I'm able to get 100% reporting on the vehicle, all things that are faulted, all things that are great. I can see all my systems in real time, RPMs, temperature, all that happy fun stuff. And I can do resetting and query manufacturer databases on all of the faults that are in there. So determining type of calibration is even going to maybe come up during your pre and your post scan if you're using these tools. So very much like in the collision repair industry, what we have auto glass technicians doing is when they first come up, they're going to talk with the customer. They're going to introduce this whole method and say, look, your car may have one or more of these systems. It's very important to do this. Here's why we're doing it. They hand them a piece of paper that's kind of just a short guide, and you're getting the permission of the vehicle owner to perform the scan. As you plug this in and perform the scan, we also do a walk around of the vehicle. We inspect the vehicles during the inspection process. So this is happening during that process. When we come back and we're done, not only do we have our inspection report done, but now we have a full readout of what the vehicle is, its health, basically. And you get the customer to sign off on it. You have a better idea of what's going on now. So the nice part is our tools to determine this don't require big machines and wheels to cart them around. We can actually keep this in our toolbox. This umbilical cord is there so technicians don't leave this underneath the dashboard at $150 a shot. And that's the nice part. This is $150. Not $1,500, not $15,000, but $150. And all of the magic always behind all of this hasn't been the hardware, it's actually been the availability of the software, the licensing from these various manufacturers in the systems to have access to interrogate those systems. They've all condensed now, and thanks to the internet and cloud technology, these things are all bundled into one place now. So very effective and something to keep in your toolbox as an auto glass technician.
Where do you get that?
Independent Glass Association has those available. I think right now in the industry we are the only ones. For us, the automotive glass industry, for the last year and a half, we've been working with the SCRS and other organizations to get on that bandwagon of supporting the manufacturer's positioning statements with regards to pre and post scanning on loss. Not just collision repair, because that is a collision. When a rock or debris hits your windshield and takes damage, there's no difference between you running into a vehicle in front of you or that rock hitting it. That loss condition is still considered collision. And the position statements of a lot of those OEMs, if you've seen those that the SCRS has put out and whatnot, they also include automotive glass in a lot of those position statements. They talk about if you're replacing a windshield and it has one or more ADAS-equipped systems, you have to do a pre and post scan on it. That's their position statement. So now the automotive glass industry is on board with that, and we're in our infancy where you guys were about a year to 2 years ago. So
Do you know if those codes, if you reset them, if they're a double, trip logic, or if it's a single?
it's a single, and it's also retained on the onboard system, so the informatics keeps it. This is an onboard diagnostic scan tool, OBD scan tool. There's no elegant name for it. They just came out with scan. I kind of like it. It's kind of nice in that sense. So, uncharted territory. So let's talk about handling claims. There's no doubt everybody in this room is going to know more about the job than the insurance company. The third-party administrator that's maybe handling the claim, definitely you're going to know more than the consumer. And surprisingly, you're probably going to know more than the dealership or the parts department or the service center at that dealership on a lot of this. You need to be prepared to share your information. You're going to actually end up being in the role of an educator to a lot of those people that I just mentioned in that supply chain. So if you're going to get authorization on something, you have to say, well, I have this, and oh, by the way, here is that from the manufacturer. Because you can take all that information I shared with you earlier, how you find the part and whatnot, and it's all in a PDF where you can say, here, this is what the manufacturer says to put this back to pre-loss condition, so I need authorization for this, period. Boom. So you're going to share that information, and patience. So if you're in the automotive glass world now, and you deal with companies like Safelite or Harman or Lynx or these third-party administrators, just to get a glass claim approved with the insured on the line takes anywhere between 10 and 20 minutes.
And then you have Safelite give them directions to their shop.
Right.
While they're on the phone with you.
So there's a lot of this that happens in the background. Yeah.
I just have a kind of an odd question.
Yeah.
You have full glass coverage. You have it, right? Why are we calling in to see if it's okay to use something that we paid for, where I can take my car to the shop, sign authorization, and have my car fixed? I already have it in my policy, I paid for it, and asking if I have it, asking if I use it, asking how much I can pay. Doesn't say in my policy how much they can pay or discount or have to go there. I never understood how we got there.
you gotta call a claim number and have to do a glass claim on it. They try to send you to the safe light to get it done. Like for my BMW, I wish to replace the mat, and they wanted to do a safe light glass, whatever it was. I was like, no.
So who told you you had to have a claim number for that?
Well, when you call your glass claims, you're automatically talking
But
to
his point is who, and I have two famous words that Bob Newhart said. Stop
You got it.
it. Why do you agree to the discounts? Why do you call the claim? But that's what I'm saying is that in this world of automotive glass, the rules are in your favor. As an independent glass shop or someone who services glass independently, you're in control of the rules. And it's the policy and the policy holder at the end of the day. In automotive glass, the insurance companies are just now, and it's a totally different subject, be happy to talk about it offside. But that is something that's also radically changing because more glass shops are going, wait a minute, why have I been playing by these rules? In one regard, glass shops let this happen. Now you need to actually take control back. So that's an entirely different thing. But I would be happy to talk to anybody about that. Yeah.
So with my customer, I try to sell factory parts as well. Aftermarket fenders, won't fit right, that kind of stuff. So depending upon how your insurance policy is written, sometimes it states there they can do like kind quality kind of thing. So if the consumer doesn't want that and they want the factory part, the insurance company will pay for the aftermarket part and the consumer would pay for the difference and get the factory part installed in the car. I don't see why you can do it with glass.
You
You
could.
can. You can.
Yeah.
That's
And you
we're
can
only
also
gonna
buy
make
an
this.
upper policy that will allow you to too. They write policies that there's true replacement, not like in kind. So you can pay extra to have that added to your policy. But the fact remains is that I tell this story too. I have a friend at American Family Insurance. I don't know if any of you are familiar with them. They're out in Madison, Wisconsin, my hometown. And I happen to know the claims man for auto glass there. And at one of our trade shows, him and I were sitting at the bar having a beer. And it was right after NAGS had a big price increase. And our price went up and their price went up, or down. They went down and we went up. And I asked him, I said, Cliff, why did you do that? He said, because you let us. We don't put in auto glass. But if you let us go down, we're gonna. Think about that a minute.
You get what you accept.
Accept. That's exactly correct. What you accept is what you're gonna get. Right? And Gary said it perfectly. Stop it.
Well, I never, ever agree to their terms, but they always
Try to search it.
tell the customer, you're gonna have to pay the difference then.
Yeah.
That's what.
And and we have education tools that will help you eliminate that right before your third party call. So by all means, get with me my card there and I would be more than happy to assist you on that. At the end of the day, this is all about safety. So making sure, so to your point, in this case, if you have an ADAS system, it doesn't matter what the policy says, if OEM glass is required to write these systems and make the vehicle safe again, you're going to get the OEM glass approved and put in there. And in fact, what we're finding right now in the industry is if you go to one or more of these third-party administrators, they actually now just say, fine, we're agreeing to it. Because they also know of the issues that you go in with the aftermarket glass, dealership won't calibrate it, you rip it out, it's this whole deal, it's a mess financially. So right off the bat, they'll just say, fine, we're approving OEM because it has an ADAS system in it, so, or one or more components of ADAS. You're driving the first notice of loss process. Undoubtedly in this case, no matter what, you know the job requirements, they don't. You're educating the customer ahead of time. Same time, you need to stand firm on those service rates. Again, this now turns in, like Bob's saying, two-man sets. You're educating people on these tools and what to do. You now have fixed costs, and two, continuing education. Bob will get through all that. You have to stand firm on your service rates. Don't bend on these at all. And again, patience. You're educating these people that don't know any better, and you become the role of the teacher. Educate. Keep saying the same thing over and over again. You say it over and over again to the same group of folks, they finally end up getting it, and at some point, everything turns in your favor. Calibration, billing, and liability. Use an ADAS disclaimer with every work order. So the vehicle comes up, the glass component, if you're using a system like ours, and it actually says, hey, there's ADAS in it, put that disclaimer in the work order. I'll show you what it looks like here. Establish relationships with calibration centers. If you're not going to invest in the equipment to do this, by all means, please go out and find calibration centers, like Bob said, buy lunch, sit down with these individuals, the salespeople or the owners of these places and say, look, I'm gonna bring this business to you, this is my set of requirements, this is how I do the replacement, will you calibrate? They say yes, arrive at a deal, go forward. The Independent Glass Association, we do have a list of calibration centers that we continue to build that you have access to as a member to find out in your community where you can actually go for those that are friendly to the independent glass cause. And what I mean by friendly is, kind of to his point, hey, we're going to work on anything and help you get the solution to get a result that works. And ensure that your calibration service fees are published, whether you're performing them or you're subcontracting them. The worst thing you want to do is replace a windshield for a customer and then let them know you need to go somewhere else, but you're not letting them know what that rate is. So getting that established relationship and knowing what those costs up front, you can let the customer know, my services are X today, or your insurance policy is covering them, and you may have to go here, and this may be an out-of-pocket expense. If you just kind of say, oh, well, I don't know, $200 to $1,000, who knows? That doesn't really bode well. So make sure you also have your fees for calibration. And set those service fees according to marketplace and to your skill set. What you are providing your customer. Don't take what the networks or insurance companies should say. Set your own rates. And don't make those rates so ridiculously astronomical on things that maybe are as small as 5 minutes or as large as 2 hours. Make sure that you're setting fair market rates and that they're published. This is what a statement looks like. So at the bottom of this work order in this case here, it's basically saying your vehicle is fitted with an advanced driver assistance system that may be affected during the replacement of your windshield. If your vehicle requires post-service calibration to restore one or more of these features to a functional state, you'll need to contact the nearest dealership who represents the make of your vehicle prior to a scheduled appointment to perform the necessary calibration. You must not rely on or operate the faulted ADAS features until the system has been recalibrated by the service professional of your choice. We will not accept any liability for the accuracy of the ADAS features, especially those windshield-mounted camera or integrity of the associated system. So again, we do have blanket statements again on behalf of the IGA that we've had lawyers vet. You still want to make sure that you have your own legal counsel sign off. But this is just an example is during that inspection process and up front with the customer, you want them to be aware of this. You're making that known when it's necessary.
Is that available to us?
It is, yes. The financial caliber, everything with ADAS has a cost. Two-man sets, all these costs are rising. It's ridiculous. So claims costs, they're just naturally rising. The technology is expensive to deal with in the first place. The education, the tools, everything is exponentially more costly than just replacing glass. However, ADAS, insurers know this, ADAS-equipped vehicles reduce accidents by 15% and bodily injury by 18%. So their savings on the back end are tremendously more than what your services are, your fees are to actually fix one or more of these components, recalibrate and put new glass in. So this is something to keep in mind. They know it, you know it. So when it comes to fee setting and tools to buy and all of this, everybody's on board here. That's the nice part. This is a nice world we're in that the insurance companies know, administrators know, dealerships know. It's just all those components in between, like part numbers and whatnot, that are difficult to deal with. One thing I do like to point out though, calibration and scan services, so this would be the scan service, calibration is what you saw with the device and whatnot. It's not a profit center, so this isn't something that you're just going to go, great, we're adding $75 to $150 onto every invoice to scan because we're doing a pre and post. And oh, by the way, we're just going to start throwing calibration out on every vehicle, whether it's required or not, and we're going to charge $200, $300 or whatnot. It's not the mindset you should be in. It's safety, following the OEM specifications, and providing the best customer service that you can.
Won't the insurance companies have that information anyway?
No. In fact, insurance companies that have their own vehicle labs where they do their own crash testing and whatnot, they focus more on the physical world of it than they do this side of the world. So a lot of them, they're playing catch up. A lot of them are here to learn about it this week. They're going to NADA to learn about it. They learned at Auto Glass Week a month ago to learn about it. They're just getting in the role of wrapping their head around why are we seeing cost rise in automotive glass claims? Oh, because it's ADAS. Well, what's ADAS? A lot of you here today going, I don't know, I'm here because I don't know what ADAS is. So they're in that same boat. Everybody's pretty much on par right now.
Do you have fair market pricing available?
We do. We have a spreadsheet available for that. Yeah, and
Of course, each market is going to be
It's going to
different.
be different, no matter, by...
It is. It's kind of like your pre and post scanning in the collision side of the world. The rates don't vary by that much. And again, what you're doing here, the thing to keep in mind is you're performing a service, you're giving a report, there's education behind this, you're plugging it in, you're doing there's some liability on your point, you're pricing that for all of that. So it's just not, hey, I plug it in, it only took me 7 minutes, I deserve to make $150.
Is that something that the insurance company's gonna cover?
Yes, they do. And the insurance companies see this as a huge benefit because it allows them a peek at the vehicle that they don't otherwise get a peek at. Glass claims happen at a higher frequency than collision claims are. So think about it, in your lifetime, you're more apt to have a glass claim than you will a collision claim. So for an insurance company, they may never see the vehicle during the life of your policy, but they're more likely to have a peek of your vehicle because there's an actual glass claim that has one or more of these systems that they can interrogate or see the system on that.
Gary, whose information is that? You have to sign a waiver allowing that information to go to the insurance company.
Right, so the
Or
consumer,
release liability, I mean, so forth.
right, so again, that is something that the customer is signing off. That's part of that setup. When you meet with them, you say, you have to allow this. So they read the disclaimer, they either do or they don't. And if they don't, then you're not performing the scan service, and now the liability shifts back onto the customer. So the manufacturer's already said, hey, to cover our warranty and do the job right, this is what we require. If the owner says, I'm not doing that, now the owner has all of the liability put back on them.
Why wouldn't that go?
Some people don't like that.
I know, they're human.
Yeah, they're human, right?
Are you saying the insurance company gets the data,
Right now they don't, but they realize in the future they will.
They
be.
may, okay.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, they're looking to Mercedes, BMW, Tesla, that the telematics, and even right now, most GM cars phone home. They say, hey, here's everything that's happened during my driving today. Just by you owning the vehicle, you agree to all the terms and conditions that are in the back here. I mean, there's a lot of information to go to manufacturers that you would just blow your mind.
the Wi-Fi's even set up on the new house, someone pulls into the shop for an oil change, there's an update for software, through the Wi-Fi updates.
Yeah.
That's the Internet of Things connectivity.
It is. The world is connected. It's unbelievable.
Scary as hell.
So anticipating what's next, I'm going to turn this over to Bob. This is the education side of it. As much as I love education, Bob is just so much better at it because that's what he does all day long. I just get to play with all these toys and talk with them. So I'm going to turn this over to Bob and enjoy. And it's, again, yeah, if anybody has any more questions on any of this after the fact, get in touch with me. I'd be happy to talk with you about it.
Okay, everyone stand up and stretch. Please, I know you've already been asking questions, and I urge you to continue. Ask as many questions as you want. Nothing on my section needs to be absolutely said that we can't deviate if we need to, okay? We're here to discuss auto glass installation and how it works in relation to the ADAS. Okay? ADAS stands for Advanced Driver Assist Systems, or Assisted Systems. ADAS can be turned off and can be turned back on. The unique thing is that if you turn it off because it's annoying the crap out of you, okay, it'll come back on as soon as you start the car again anyway. Because it's,
Why would it annoy you? What does it do
well,
that's
some
annoying?
of them will bang, 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 and others will vibrate your butt. Another will make the vibration of the steering wheel. Depends on what the system is. All right? So if you like to, daydream and sing to your favorite song, and you hit the center line and it starts vibrating, it bugs the crap out of you. So you turn it off. Okay? So the question is it a safety device or not? Interesting discussion point, right? Is it a safety thing or not?
Windshield?
No?
The ADAS.
Is an ADAS a safety system or not?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, we've got several people that have different opinions. The fact remains is that it's not defined at this point, because you know who defines it? The jury. Okay? I've been involved in about 36 court cases involving improper auto glass installation. I'm considered an expert witness, and it's funny, but the fact remains is that no matter what is said and what the definitions are, the jury makes the decision. The jury is the only one who makes the decision. And when the person is wheeled in a wheelchair, they're quadriplegic. The jury will make a decision. And every time you see a car commercial, how many times do they talk about the ADAS system that is a safety device that is going to save your life, right? They've said it a million times on the television. Then they have that disclaimer. This doesn't take the place of attentiveness of the driver. But the fact remains is that it is a safety device. And by law, a repair facility cannot render a safety device inoperative. It is a law. It's the NHTSA Safety Act of 1966. Any repair facility cannot render a safety device inoperative. You can't even release the vehicle if it's inoperative. So this is a big deal. As a matter of fact, how many of you are glass people? I know you are. You are? Okay. If any of you have been in business for any amount of time, there's been about 4 or 5 major things that happened in our industry that was a sea change. I mean, it completely changed everything. Of course, 1919, glass was introduced by the Ford Motor Company. Other than that, it was a carriage, right? Speed got up, things were thrown up in there, they had slickers and goggles, right? Drove in the car. That was a big deal when they added glass. Next thing came curved windshield. No, curved windshields. Curved windshields changed the industry because now distributors and glass manufacturers, and before we cut the glass, put it in the frame, mount it to the car. Right? That's what it was. After that, we had glued-in windshields. Whole different tool industry was introduced. Prior to cold knives, what did we use? Piano wire. Guess what we're back to? We're right back to piano wire again. And then, of course, in 1973, urethane. Do you still remember the first time you pulled a cold knife through urethane?
Yeah.
You swore it was liquid concrete. Never knew what it was. You know, we bought prior to that polysulfide and butylate. Then all of a sudden this stuff came out. What in the heck is that? 1,300 pounds per square inch of tensile strength in there. Pound for pound stronger than steel itself. Okay? And we were having to cut the glass out and reinstall it, all these other things. And now this. ADAS is a sea change. Think of what that insurance executive thought when the windshield that came in for $200, $300 installed is now $1,000 overnight. They have no idea why. All of a sudden, it's there. And the auto glass guys, all you guys out there putting in auto glass.
We go to order one and we go, holy shit.
Yeah, holy shit. Exactly the word I was thinking, but I couldn't. But anyway, so things need to change. I don't know if you've I do write a blog through glassbites.com. It's called Technically Speaking. And I've been addressing this for the last 18 months to 2 years. We've been addressing, we're still learning. We still walk into dealerships and say, we'd like to get this car recalibrated. And they go, huh? What? Yeah, we replaced the windshield and it's supposed to be recalibrated. Oh, we don't do windshields. We farm it out. But that's not what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking you to recalibrate the ADAS systems in it. What's ADAS? Honest to God, ladies and gentlemen, this is what we're hearing on a daily basis still today. 2 years after the introduction of these products. They don't even know what it is. What's that?
My guys don't. I have 11 service advisors. You can ask any one of them.
That's excellent.
We'll go.
That is excellent. But there's a lot of other ones that they don't even know. We had
No, they don't know.
Oh, they don't know.
No.
We had one of our sales reps walk into a dealership. She asked every service writer in there, including the service manager. No one knew anything about it. Finally, the big boss walked in and she says, I'm trying to get this recalibrated. And you guys don't, none of you guys know what we're talking about. He goes, oh, are you talking about that box, that tool that came in? We kind of don't know what to do with it. And this is months, no, years after this has been introduced. We know more than our customers do. And we need to educate it. I know we don't like to go and call on people. We kind of just hope that our advertising will bring in people, but it's not that anymore, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sorry. You've got to go and talk to these people. Or you have to buy a tool. And like Gary said, between 7 and 15 grand for a calibration tool.
And then next year it's outdated.
Could be.
We're not using an on-site service.
With that,
We're not using mobile or on-site service.
you aren't.
Why wouldn't you? Why do you? My question is, why do y'all, or why do you prefer dealer? Why not use a mobile service?
Well, you can if your city happens to have it.
Or if they're up to technology enough to be able to communicate with that vehicle.
Exactly. Not all companies have the equipment to do it. Which kind of brings us to some of this stuff. You need to educate yourself, your employees, your company. You have to change policy. Meaning, I've got to go buy this tool, or I'm not going to go buy this tool. I'm going to use the dealership groups. But to do the dealerships in your area, you need to talk to them a little bit. Just like Gary said, go out there and say, listen, I'm going to bring you this business. What are you going to require? Here's what I require. Well, we require only glass. Oh, really? We know that that's not the case. We know that you can calibrate it unless there's a drastic distortion or something wrong with the glass. I can understand that. But just refusing it out of hand because it doesn't have your logo on the bug, it doesn't mean anything. We have a gentleman who's on by the way, I'm also the chairman of the Auto Glass Aggress Standards Committee. And we have 38 to 40 different members on this committee from insurance companies, from dealership groups, from glass companies, from adhesive companies, and many auto glass installing companies. And every one of them have stories that they tell, and we make standards based on that kind of information. And it's really interesting. We've been studying this for 2 years, and everyone has a different thing. Got to use OE? No, you don't. One of our members actually helped buy, purchase, and put into place the Safe Lights calibration system from Bosch. He lives in California. He works for a glass company, not Safe Light anymore, but he works for a different glass company, and he says any windshield can be calibrated. And all of my dealerships will calibrate it for me. But if you don't go out and make those calls and convince those dealerships that, guys, I need to know, are you going to force me to buy OE? Or will I be able to buy a glass that I can make a buck on? And if they say, well, you know, you got to have it, it says right here in the book. Well, we know that's not true. We know that it can be calibrated. It means that you have to go through the effort to do it and not just run it out back because it didn't throw a fault. But yeah, it's got to be done. Yes, sir.
How many things can we possibly affect if we're not taking the time to look up the OE instructions, how to remove and replace that windshield? We just jump in there and start cutting them out.
Well, that's what this section is about. You need to educate, guys. What I said earlier, most people just learn auto glass by riding in the truck with an older installer, and they assume that that older installer is doing it right. Well, that older installer learned how to put in glass with butyl tape. Does that make it right? No. I pride myself on my school, Auto Glass University, making sure that we don't just say the whys or the how-tos, but why we do it. So the technician, when he approaches an unusual situation, can make an educated decision on that. So education is the key. You need to anticipate what's coming up next in our industry and go from there. One of the things is we have a certification through the Auto Glass Safety Council, and this certification, you don't have to be a member of the Auto Glass Safety Council. You can be your own independent glass shop. You don't have to be part of the group, but you can put them through a test to prove to your customers, to prove to the insurance companies, and to prove to everyone else that you took the time and the effort to make sure those guys know what they're doing. So when they send them out and that patch is on their arm, the customer can feel assured that it's done right. So I urge that all technicians should be certified. And when you get it, be proud of it, advertise it, market it, put it in the face of your consumers, and they will be much more confident in your work.
Where's that information at?
It's called, it's agsc.org, or the autoglasssafetycouncil.org. All of that is right on their website. You don't even have to go anywhere. Everything is online. Sign up, test, everything is right there. I urge you to use the study material listings that they have, so those guys will pass first time. Or you can send them to one of the, hire people out to do training for you. You can make your own training and put that into place. And then they can pass that test, and it's a certification. What certification means is that it need to be recertified every 3 years. Or you need to collect enough continuing education credits so they don't have to test. The AGSC is going to put videos online for you guys. Well, I shouldn't say that. I don't think it's open unless you're an AGSC member. But if you're an AGSC member, you get this free access to online training to make sure your guys are trained before they take the test. I urge you to do that. And we urge you to make sure that you have training on a regular basis. And again, you don't have to spend big dollars like for me to come out to you or send them to the Auto Glass University. I'd sure like it. But the fact is, you can make your own. You can make your own program. It will be accepted by the AGSC, and your guys will pass the test and give credit for it. So that's a great deal. But it is important to make sure that training is done right. All right? Don't be confused. There are some training out there that they say, well, it's auto glass installation training, when it's really an advertisement for a tool, or it's an advertisement for an adhesive, or it's an advertisement for glass, right? The one thing, and I'm very proud of this, my Auto Glass University and my program is completely unbiased. We're comprehensive. We teach everything. I'll teach the extractor right next to the equalizer ambush, right next to the GT tools. 3 different brands with the same type of tool. And let you guys make decisions based on your likes, what you feel is comfortable to in your hands. I've got students that will die for a BTV tool. They would not trade it. You'll have to pry it on their cold, dead hands. And then another guy says, I wouldn't buy that at all. I'm buying the equalizer, or I'm buying the extractor. And everyone, none of that's wrong. See, that's the thing. There's not one wrong decisions on any of that.
The only thing that's wrong about this is when they list them at $1,200.
Well, that's a fact. I used to own my own glass shop, 2 of them actually. And I know, I'm a cheap son of a bitch too. I'm looking for price all the time. And that should be a decision point. eBay's a wonderful thing, by the way. And pawn shops are a wonderful thing. Some kid who bought a tool and he doesn't like auto glass anymore, go there and you find them real dirt cheap. Okay? But all of that stuff is yours to choose and find. Now, you must adhere to the ANSI standard because it's been tested in court and it is a comprehensive standard. That's different than the federal motor vehicle safety standards. Now, I do want to make sure you understand the difference between motor vehicle safety standards and the AGRESS standard. The motor vehicle safety standards are standards that are put upon vehicle manufacturers. When you're building, when your company built the Hondas, they have to meet the federal standards or they wouldn't be able to be sold in the United States. If you go down to Mexico, there's a car maker called SEAT, S-E, it sounds like seat. But it can't be sold in America because it doesn't meet the American standards. You don't see Citroën here. Citroën is a French car company. It's not in America. You'd have to buy it there and bring it here because they don't meet American standards. There's Russian cars, there's Chinese cars that are not here because they don't meet our standards. But those that are here must meet the motor vehicle safety standards when they are sold at your dealership. Once they're sold, there's a whole different animal. Now, by law, those standards don't apply except because of the NHTSA Safety Act of 1966. You repair that car, and now you're under the rules of the NHTSA Safety Act. So what did we do? We came with the AGRESS ANSI standard. AGRESS stands for Auto Glass Replacement Safety Standard. It's a standard which is only 5 pages long, actually, minus the definitions. But it's about 5 pages long. It's pretty easy to understand, and it addresses everything that is necessary to make sure everything's done right.
What's the second S for?
I'm sorry? Safety standard. Okay? Safety is everything when it comes to auto glass installation, and it all boils down to one incident in 1973. OPEC nations decided that we were paying too little for oil. And the fuel embargo, many of you remember it, came into being. When I was going to college, I was pumping gas for 25 cents a gallon. 25 cents. And overnight meaning within about 3 months, it went from 25 cents to $1. Now you might say, oh, $1, I wish it was $1 now. Think about this. If you take your food bill today, quadruple it. Would it change your way of life?
Oh my gosh, yeah.
That's what oil did to the auto glass industry and to the automotive industry. The whole industry. There was, remember American Motors, Ramblers, right? The Javelin, the Pacer. That no longer exists because of the fuel crunch of 1973. If you remember back in 1973, how many Toyotas, Datsuns did you see? Zero. Mitsubishi, Mazda, none of them. We had Volkswagens.
Honda was a little motorcycle.
That little motorcycle, right? Mitsubishis were a TV set. We didn't have any of these cars here. Why? Because they were building small cars way before we were. All of our cars that take 7 to 10 years to build and design are going to be on the drawing board. They were based on 25 cents a gallon. So what did the domestic car makers do? They bought the foreign cars and rebadged them. Chevy Love pickup truck, remember that one? That's a Mitsubishi. And so pretty soon, that's what changed everything. So when we talk about the safety of this, everything changed. Windshields for years was exactly what the name implied. It kept the wind and the rocks out of your face. That was it. As long as it didn't leak, good. Now, it helps support the roof. It helps backstop those airbags. All of these things, if it's done incorrectly, will make the passengers and the occupants of that car in danger. And what you need to get across to everybody in the automotive and the collision industry and the dealership industry is that glass is a safety device that cannot be ignored. It helps support the roof. It helps position the airbag for deployment. All of these things are important. So the proper installation is key. The windshield is an integral part of the safety restraint system in every vehicle. As a matter of fact, if you look at the 7 motor vehicle safety standards that either apply directly to the auto glass business or indirectly, 2 of them define what we call minimum driveway time. Are you familiar with minimum driveway time?
Yes.
What is that? Could you describe it for everybody?
It's the time that the agris, or, you know, whoever sets the standard says that it is safe to drive this car away after putting the windshield in.
Okay, so in other words, the adhesives that are used to hold the glass in place must reach a certain level so the vehicle can be safely driven. And we say minimum because it's not 100% safe yet.
And it's not completely cured.
Right. It may take a few more hours or a day or so.
Right. Oh, even a couple
Several
of
days.
weeks.
It can. It depends on the brand of the urethane and your climate conditions. But the point is it's a big thing. And we define safe driveway time as meeting 208, which is passive restraint system motor vehicle safety standard, and windshield retention, which is 212. Those 2 things are what we define safe driveway time to be. Now, we need to not just do it once in a while. We need to make sure that the proper installations are done every time. Every time. Do you know what the #1 reason for windshield failure is? Improper cleaning of the glass.
No.
Did you ever think you had to teach someone to clean glass properly? It's the number it takes. When I train my students, it will take almost a half an hour just to teach them how to clean the glass. Just to clean it. You know, you're used to washing the mirror in your bathroom, right? Or washing the windshield on your car after it's installed. But cleaning it is the key. And it's not the transparent part you look through.
Right.
Because the windshield that you look through, you're not looking at it, it's the perimeter.
Right. Whenever I bring a new tech in, that is such a pain in the butt.
Yes, that's right. It is.
Well, and
Proper-
make sure you've got the right kind of primer to go along with.
That's true too. How many of you use primerless urethanes?
I use both. Depends on what I'm.
Okay, primerless urethanes, there's nothing wrong with them at all. But if you don't clean the glass right, you're screwed.
That's true.
One thing primers do is it's kind of like a last ditch effort to get it to stick. But if you're primerless, you have no last ditch. It's cleaning or it's screwed.
I use the same kind of adhesive on every single job, with the exception of, you know, like a foreign car, you know, I have to use the high mark to not conduct it. But
We talked earlier, to your point, we talked earlier about, you know, pricing. God, how can I make any money? And insurance, they only pay for like in kind and not what's in the car. These are all true statements. It happens. Why don't you have an option for the customer to make a decision? In a past life, I used to sell appliances, household appliances, refrigerators, freezers, right? Anytime you go to an appliance store, how many different washers and dryers do they have? Brands. Tons. Why? So the customer can make a decision and you can close the sale. How many windshields do you have in your shop for one particular car? One. Do you have two different kinds?
Brand.
No, not necessarily. You have OE or aftermarket, all right? Do you charge the same price for both?
Well, no.
Good for you. The fact remains is you should give your customer an option. Your insurance company pays for this, and they pay for this kit charge, and they pay for these moldings,
Right.
okay? What your car needs is this, and this, and this, which will cost you this much more, this much more, and this much more. Now, what do you want me to do, sir? Do you want what should be in your car, or what your insurance company says should be in your car? All I'm trying to say is, now you said I only use one urethane, which is great, nothing wrong with that, but I'll bet you if you're using the high-end advanced cure urethanes, you're not making a heck of a lot of money from the insurance companies. You're probably even losing money on it. You're making the money on the glass, but you're losing the money on your kit charge, right? Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
But for liability, that you can be
That's the argument. It's a cheap insurance policy.
It's a better product.
You're saying it's a cheap insurance policy, and I'll agree with that. But personally, remember I said I won't do business, I was a cheap son of a bitch? I don't ever give something away for nothing.
Right.
If I'm not making money, I'm not going to sell it. I'm sorry, tell me I'm wrong, but why would you be in business to lose money?
Yeah.
Right? You're not. So what you have to do is give your customer an option. Your insurance company will give you this urethane. You can drive it in 12 hours. What? I can't wait 12 hours. Well, that's what your insurance company pays us. However, I do have a product that you can drive it in 30 minutes. 30 minutes? Yeah, and it'll only cost you a $20 bill. I'll pay $20 for that. That's how you close it. And you got at least your money back from the kit charge. And the same goes with glass.
I was gonna say, the same thing holds true with glass. I would rather not make as much money and give them a better product and call back and say, this thing's distorted, take it back out. Now I've wasted, an entire.
Did anyone ever sit down and put a pen to a callback? How much it costs you to make a callback? Did you? How much did you come up with on average?
About $140.
How much do you make on a typical installation?
$160.
I rest my case.
Yeah.
So I do it twice and I make $20, I lost money, so.
What,
Plus, you're not doing one that
it's-
somebody's gonna pay you for, so you actually lost that one too.
So what's the,
Manufacturer, they'll give us a glass, but they won't give us a.
so what it all is about is doing the glass right the first time and making money on it the first time and not having to go back a second time. That's the whole key to this. And it's the whole key to proper installation training. Because when you can reduce your callback percentage, the average callback percentage when I started the business was 5%. 5%. Do you know what it is now? About 2.5%. Because of increased training and an increase in the acceptance of VBs over round. And there's some other little things that were incorporated in there that made the callbacks less. But we've had a change between water leaks to air noise because of the exposed edge glass.
Or is that because of the fly-by-night companies you can't even get a hold of?
That's true. But yet people always buy there for price, and that's not what you want to do.
Right.
You can have a matching price to some of your competitors if you want, but tell them what's wrong with it.
Yeah.
And then have an answer for them. All right, so what we're doing here, ejection and serious collision, including the rollovers, these are all part of the windshields and the stationary glass's job is to help support those roofs and help support the air bay deployment. Now the Egress ANSI standard, which has just been introduced, or I shouldn't say introduced, a new one has been revised. This is the standards scope. It's an automotive glass replacement safety standard addressing procedures, education, and product performance for motor vehicles falling within the guidelines of Federal Motor Vehicle Safety Standard 212 and 208. That's the scope of the standard. Now here is what I would call the golden rule of our standard. And many of you are not going to like it. The golden rule of the standard is this. You can't install glass in a vehicle that is compromised. If there's corrosion, if it is deformed, you can't install it. The guys here with $300, $400, $500, sir, I want you to put that windshield in that rust bucket over there.
I won't do it.
It's tough as an owner to turn down that money that's well, just put more goop in it. Just put more goop in it.
I hear that all the time.
Of course. But yet, and there's hundreds of your competitors that are still doing it today.
Yeah, I just tell them I'm not a body shop. It's gotta get fixed before I get it forever.
So how many are body shops in this building? All right, and how many of you do your own glass work? 1, 2. Okay? The other ones farm it out. Do you know what they're doing and if they're doing it right?
How many of those body shops?
That's the question I'd like to ask you. Because the problem is that I made a statement several years ago that 70% of the glass installed in this country is raw. And I made that basis. First of all, it was misquoted. I was giving an explanation of a training class I gave in Arizona and Florida. And out of those, we did 17 to 20 jobs. And out of those 20 jobs, 17 of them were put into butyl tape.
Because?
Just because. We had all of the cars that came to the school for replacement were replaced once before, and all of them, or almost all of them, had butyl tape in it, and that were supposed to be urethane in. And my quote was 70% of the cars we did in my class were done incorrectly, and they took it and took it a step farther. But the point is that if it happens there, in 2 different places, it could happen, you could extrapolate that out and go that way. I think it's becoming better. I think we're a better industry over the last 10 years. But it's not any better in a lot of ways too. All right? And so what we have done with our standard is we have added that 4.2, which is about the ADAS, meaning that we need to do that. And it should be part of the training program. And then we also have that you must follow comprehensive instructions for the use of your adhesives and for the instructions given to you by the vehicle manufacturers. Not saying that the vehicle manufacturers' instructions are always correct, because they're not. Sometimes they're copied and pasted from the previous year, and it's a new model year, and there were no changes made. But you need to look at it. Basics, installation 101, the basics. I feel this is what every training needs to include. Of course, you need to check the fault codes before installation so you know you're starting on a level playing field. Secondly, we only accept the full cut method. No 3-sided, no close cutting, right? Little word of advice. If you see the wipers up, they're cheating. There's only one car where the wipers can come up, Jeep Wrangler. All others need to have the cowl pulled.
Wow.
Because you can't tuck it and expect the bottom bead to be solid. You're putting your glass into the bead and not onto the bead. If it's not on the bead, you're only gluing to the edge of the glass, and the edge of the glass isn't strong enough to withstand an air day deployment.
There are many, many cars you can lift the cowl up on.
There's
Get them out of the way.
all right. You're right. I misspoke. It should be pulled or displaced.
Right.
I was gonna say.
Okay, I'm sorry. I misspoke there. I I meant that you either take it off or you displace it so you can get the glass onto the bead, not into the bead.
Right.
Okay? But you have to concern yourselves when you see too many wipers in the up position. Means you might be able to move the cowl a little bit, or there's some like the Toyota where the bead is above the edge of the cowl.
Yeah.
Then you can put it and tuck it in.
Right.
There are some situations where that will occur, but not many. Not many. There's a few, not many.
And the cars are getting so crappy these days, the plastics that you try to take something apart and half of it breaks.
And they warp
That's.
or break.
You mainly break.
I had a class in California. We did a Mini Cooper.
Mm-hmm.
8 pillars broke.
Yeah. Well, that's 'cause
But
they
I have
pull
never
screws
broken one in Wisconsin.
out. That's because they didn't pull the screws out. Right.
No. They broke it because it was aged and deteriorated.
Yeah.
The sunlight in the southern states are a whole different animal than up in Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Ford Flex, same thing.
How about a brand new Explorer?
Oh yeah, don't even talk about that.
What a piece of shit.
All of it. OE versus ARG versus OEE glass. We talked about that before, so I'm not going to reiterate that.
What's ARG?
Original equivalent.
Oh.
Original equivalent.
ARG.
That's a fancy name for ARG.
What's ARG?
Aftermarket replacement glass.
Okay. Okay. And that question I asked earlier never got addressed. Is there a way we can find out what technically is OE, OEM,
There is no definition.
aftermarket?
Other-
There's a lot of aftermarkets I will not touch.
It's either a glass that comes from the OE with their DOT number, right? Or it's aftermarket. You want a Carlex, which is car light, right? That's for Fords. They also make glass for Toyotas. Is that an OEM? Yes, for Fords. Is it OEM for Toyota? No, it's an ARG. And I just told you the difference between the Pilkingtons. They have the same line side by side. One is OE, one is aftermarket.
Yeah. How do you tell the difference?
You don't.
I mean, if you're buying it.
We were talking yesterday about a Honda dealership in Minneapolis. He has a body shop. They do their own glass work, and they're also owned by the dealership. They put in a Pilkington aftermarket windshield in a Honda Accord. They took it over to the dealership to get calibrated. They couldn't calibrate it. Now they're workers, they work together. This is not to the best interest of the dealer. They took it back, took the Pilkington out, put the Pilkington OE in, it was calibratable.
How do you tell that by the bug on it or whatever?
You can't. See, that's the point.
Well, how do they know what you buy then?
First of all, it has something to do with the dealership's ability to calibrate properly. All right? There are differences in people. It's just like a good auto glass installer and a bad auto glass installer. You have good calibrators and bad calibrators. Guys who take the time to make accurate measurements.
So
And then there's others.
if the dealer was the same technician that was trying to calibrate the OE compared to the OE.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite understand.
Was it the same
calibrating?
technician that was trying to calibrate that same windshield, the two different windshields?
They only have one guy who does the calibrations.
So the problem is windshield, not the technician.
I have a question. I'm from PA, Pittsburgh area. I have Honda, Toyota, Subaru dealers. I also have a friend in an hour away has another glass shop. For whatever reason, every Honda he's changed, same cars that I've changed, every one of his had to be calibrated, none of mine have. So my technicians, we've had 6. He's had probably 13, he has a couple more dealers than I do in that line. Out of the 6 we've done, none had to be calibrated.
How did you
Every one of
measure
his.
it? How did you measure it?
We just 2 people, we set it. We look at the roof. We look at the corner of the glass from the roof from the A-pillar. And we set them on both sides. One thing different I noticed.
So you didn't use a scan to
No.
see if it threw a code.
No.
You looked on the dash and no light lit up, all right, here's your problem. You probably did have to be calibrated. Now, here's how it was explained to me by
Several
several.
customers have said something, because I've never.
Well,
They probably won't turn.
Most of the
marks
customers
on,
don't know how to use the
or they won't
technology.
have- They won't have the feature actually active.
your camera shoots through an area about this wide, all right? And if you hit a good pothole, that camera can shift and not throw a code. Okay? But the next time it hits that pothole, and it'll throw, all right?
Customer's not gonna have to worry
If you did a windshield and you put it in, and it didn't throw a code, it doesn't mean it's perfectly calibrated. Perfectly calibrated is dead middle of that, not here. It probably didn't throw a code. I would say your installer did a good job of handling that camera, and that you buy relatively good glass, I'm assuming.
We bought Pilkington, PGW, which it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
A lot of PGW I won't buy anymore.
I don't like PGW anymore.
But I have noticed that some of the glass from Migrant
Hmm?
has been well, it's been better than some of the
That's why,
PGW, so it just,
that's why it's been
it's
good.
touchy.
The next question is, does your guy or the other competitor that does it, does he always take it in because they say in Honda's
No,
instructions that it should be recalibrated?
no, he is now, he has been, since the beginning he didn't, but one thing that was different between us, we didn't disconnect the camera, we left everything wired, we just put a little strap to help hold it, suspended, where he disconnected everything. So I didn't know.
But again, so here's the thing, and I'll use adaptive cruise control, who's familiar with that in here. So you have to actually, the car just doesn't turn it on when you're driving, you actually have to turn it on. That is a feature that 95% of most car owners that have adaptive cruise control never use. So they would actually never go to engage that button to see the warning light say, can't engage it, can't see the road. So there are a lot of these ADAS features that until you go to use them, you won't even get a check engine light unless you use a scan tool. And adaptive cruise control is a perfect example for that. That is something that you'll never know until you go to use it. And then the thing is, the owner of the vehicle is never going to put two and two together to say, well, that's going to be, the glass guy's probably just going to say, adaptive cruise control doesn't work, I'm going to take it in for service.
Yeah. Many times they don't know that the changing of the windshield is what's causing that problem, they won't complain to you.
Just like a
Well,
ring
that's the
sensor for
biggest
that
thing,
matter.
because it doesn't always throw a code. If it's just off even a millimeter, and the camera is angled to the wrong place, then my adaptive cruise control, I also have forward collision alert. And so maybe I'm not using my adaptive cruise control, but what happens when the little neighbor kid runs in front of my car and my camera isn't calibrated, it didn't throw a code, there was no warning light, but it's not calibrated correctly because it wasn't redone and it should always be redone, and I run over Johnny, and maybe my car would have stopped and I wouldn't have run over Johnny.
Or maybe it says to stop 20 feet past when you already hit them.
So just real quick, forward collision is not camera, it's LiDAR. So that's going to be the dome that's probably down in the air dam of your, so two different types of systems. But still, the camera and LiDAR talk to
Must
one
talk to
another.
them, they
Yes.
talk to each other.
So in my opinion, I mean, we bought the system so that we can do our own calibrations.
Perfect.
And, I mean, we argue with people all the time about the need for it. Even the dealership, we replaced the windshield for the dealership in a car that had an ADAS, and they didn't want to pay to have it recalibrated, and they weren't going to have their guys do it either, because they didn't think it was important. And to me, it's.
And I don't wanna be insensitive here 1 month after the incident that happened in Las Vegas at Mandalay Bay. But the fact remains is a gun or a weapon aimed at a target, 1 millimeter off means feet, 30 feet or 40 feet in
And
front of
that's
you.
what I try to tell them.
And when if they miss that, that'll mean the difference between a front end collision and a complete warning that you crossed the center line. And so, it didn't blow a code,
Right.
but it could mean the difference between life and death. And see, that's where all this comes into play. So where all of this comes into play.
And to me, it's more about
And even though it's not happened yet, but someday, somebody's gonna get killed because the ADAS was not recalibrated. Heaven forbid it's any one of you folks, but it's gonna happen. right?
It's not gonna happen to me, because I'm actually not done.
Good for you.
Knock on wood.
But I mean, the fact remains is that this is something that needs to be understood, and you need to make decisions on this. Am I gonna send it to the dealer, or am I gonna buy that 15 grand tool? And that, either way, you're going good. You just need to deal
Well,
with
that's the problem we ran into, is our dealers
it. Wouldn't
wouldn't
do
do
it.
it. Because they said it didn't need to be done, and actually, we had an F-150, and that was kind of deciding why we decided to spend the money. We asked the service guy, said, does this F-150, after we put a windshield in it, require recalibration? The service manager said no. I said, okay, send me an email with that in writing. Oh, well, I
Yeah,
can't quite do that. And I said, well, I need that to show it to the customer, to say, hey, you guys said it wasn't. Well, then they backpedal, and they're like, well, if it's gotta be in writing, I better do some research.
yeah.
And then they come out and say, oh, well, I guess it probably does need to be
Yeah.
recalibrated.
See, and that's the thing. They don't know
Well,
what they don't know. And you also have to understand that there are some dealerships that don't handle glass at all. And the service manuals that they get in for mechanics and body, they take the body and throw it away because they farm out their body work and their glass work. They don't know because they don't have to know.
Doesn't make them any less liable.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't make them any less liable because recalibration is on the mechanic side, not on the body shop side. Okay? Make sure you replicate the OEM bead. We talk about this in training, and I know we're getting close to the end, so I just want to make this point quickly. You need to replicate that bead as best as you possibly can. You cut at the right width and the right height. The height should be equal to or higher than the L-shaped pinch weld wall. And when you deck it, it should be slightly below flush. And you're pretty close to being right in the money. You need to center it in the opening. You can't have it sitting too far to one side and too far to the other, because that is going to make the camera that much different. You get it? So those things are important.
Some of those pre-cut tips
Yeah.
are really bad.
Yeah, you've got to check each tip. Now, I just want to explain passive systems versus the active systems. The passive systems basically warn. They're lane departure, they vibrate, they ding, 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 all of these kinds of things. Whether it's collision alert or whatever, it's just going to tell you, hey, wake up, watch the road, right? Where when you look at the active systems, the vehicle takes control. They actually will steer the car back to the center. Or they'll actually brake at high speeds. Or they'll slow you down and speed you up on the cruise control. These are active systems. They are the ones that will require the more intense calibration. The new Honda Accord is good, or even the older Honda Accord, requires both passive and, or not passive, I'm sorry, both static and dynamic calibrations. Static is making the measurements when the car is standing still. They have a target out in front, much like a wheel alignment, and you line the camera up to those targets, and you push the button and the camera adjusts. That's dynamic, or static. It's usually the most time consuming. You're making accurate measurements, you're double checking them. It also is the thing that requires infrastructure. You've got to have at least 30 feet in front of the vehicle so you can aim it. Okay? The floor's got to be relatively level. I was told that if you drop a can of pop onto the floor, it better not roll. If it rolls one way or the other, it's not adequate enough. You've got to have the weight of the vehicle in the right. So you can't have your golf clubs in the back. Golf clubs have to come out. The gas tank has to be 3/4 of a tank or full.
Is this the calibrator?
Yes. So these kinds of things are in place. Now, when you go into the other ones, which is that's the static and the most time consuming and usually the most expensive. If you go into the dynamic, the dynamic is driving it. The dynamic can take 5 minutes. You just hop in the car, drive it down a Walmart road, it resets itself, it tells you on the dashboard, you're good. Stop the car, turn it off, restart it, boom, it's ready to go. Usually quick. When you're pricing this out, you need to take into consideration if it's static or dynamic or both, and price it accordingly. Now, if I were you, I would look at what the labor rates force calibration is from a dealer and charge the same thing. And here's one last thing before I let you go. I would suggest, and I don't know if you guys have had a situation yet, because you've got the octane,
Yeah.
you might have a problem getting good pricing from your insurance companies. I would suggest starting another company.
They approve everything.
Yeah, but they're proving it off of Safe Light's pricing arrangements.
Right.
If you took it to him to have it recalibrated, they would give you the money they give him. But if you do it, they'll only give you the money that Safe Light.
They just give whatever we decide to charge.
All right, good for
You're in a
you.
good market then.
Then you're in a good market. Most of them will only cover what Safe Light charges for their service in your market.
And there is no safe light in our market.
Perfect.
Good for you. Jeez.
Where do you live?
That's excellent. All right, we're gonna, thank you for coming.
Before you do leave, right in front of you, you do have this comment card. You can fill it out now, or you can actually take it with you and drop it off at another seminar series later, because it does have this seminar on it. They'll be happy to take this annual.
I'll take it here, or they can leave it on this.
Perfect, yeah.
Thank you very much. We will be around if anyone has any other questions. We can answer it for you.